These are some examples pulled right out of IIEP. What I want to show you is how we've tried to work with our staff to get them to convert a lot of different things to single point. This is for language comprehension, specifically following directions, and including some concept words in those directions. But they have a number, so student followed 16 out of 39 oral multi-step directions that had concept words. That's 41%. The need is that they're going to demonstrate comprehension of directions and statements in the school environment, and then the goal was that the student will demonstrate comprehension of directions and sequencing concept words. There's another piece in there by September 2013. So to state that that September 2013 was the end of the ACR review year, I think this case conference was actually they revised the IEP. I think it was actually in January, so it's not the full year. There was a goal that was set for the full year, but I think they may have tweaked it just a little bit. So they're only going to measure till the end of the ACR year. The other thing to do is in 36 weeks or however long your school session is, that a student's going to do something. So they used a single point for this. This is where you'll see that we include the objectives and benchmarks. So we'll follow single-step directions with 70% accuracy. We'll follow two-step directions with 70%, and we'll sequence 2 to 4 steps directions with 70%. So that's the, yeah, and that's now where the title says progress monitoring assessment, and it says progress monitoring assessment, and then it says subject area following directions. I think we need to work on that a little bit, the title of that, but again, I was trying to pull real life situations for you. So you see that based on the numbers from the front, the starting value was 40. They've given it from March till September. If you were doing an ACR, it would have been September to September. Now granted, we're not going to do a data collection in July unless we were on a year-round calendar, but I suppose you could. So you're going to have some data points in there. You're required to do, this one said 4, or however many, or per reporting level. You can put more in there. So more is always better, I would say. And I would say a good rule of thumb is 6 to 8 data points before you make some really big decisions about that student, whether it's about your intervention or changing goals or adding support or whatever it is. 6 to 8, so you can really take a look at. I know a lot of staff went, oh my gosh. But when you think about those, to go in and to enter a percentage or a number or whatever, instead of writing a narrative for descriptive documentation or doing something like this, like putting a date and saying on this date it was at 40%, on this date it was 60% in descriptive documentation, this is going to take a lot less time.
Yes, a lot.
So this is, we're trying to get people to move in that direction. And then you can see how if you had, there are no data points because it's not May, or it wasn't at the time. You can see how if you had data points above and below the line, you would be defensible, you'd have the cold hard information. There's not a discussion about if you think he can do something or whether he is or he isn't doing something, or she. Here's one from math computation. I promised things other than speech and language things. So I am really not the math person, but anyway, they used the math CBM baseline scores. The student got a computation score of 4, which was below the 10th percentile, and then it explains the winner target, which is always important to put the targets. And then talked about what the most recent unit math test was, talked about what the assessment measured, first of all, and then the student was unable to add 3 numbers together, also unable to solve 2-digit subtraction problems. Here's something that does not pass the stranger test. Daily 1-minute addition fact test. Student has moved from level A to level G since September. I don't know what that means. It looks pretty good to have moved from level A to level G, but we don't really know. Perhaps other students moved to level X. So I don't know. And then, so the goal for this particular student was that the student would score 15 correct on grade level math computation CBM in 8 minutes. So going from 4 to 15, hopefully we're going to see that on the next page. Again, we've got benchmarks, so we'll score a 7 correct, we'll score 11 correct, and 15. So they stair-stepped it, just some baby steps. And then, of course, this is always key, and as we've reviewed some IEPs, this doesn't always happen, but this needed to match what you said in the present levels. And if it doesn't, there's kind of a problem. So that was 4. The score was 4. They're going for a measure of 15. So over time, you can track that progress. And one more, even something not necessarily academic, but important nevertheless. A student with self-advocacy issues. Again, you can even turn that into single-point measures. I know that previously it would probably lent itself more to descriptive things, but to make life easier and to make yourself more defensible, this would be a good way to think about it. Talking about how the student doesn't ask for help or clarification. So now, I did find a little boo-boo in this one. The goal is that the student is going to seek help to complete tasks by verbally asking or clarifying 4 or 5 observations by September 2013. When we get to the actual graph, it looks to me like it says the initial value is 1. I'm not sure where that 1 came from. It doesn't match what was in the present levels. And again, there's your ambiguity, there's the problem. So, and actually, my preference for in a goal would be to use that exact word, opportunities. So on 4 out of 5 opportunities, there doesn't need to be a specific staff member there to track that. A classroom teacher, an IA, anybody can report that kind of data. So I'm glad these kind of had their little glitches in them so we could create discussion with that, because that's a really valid point.